Not everybody in Pittsburgh likes it, but that's where I grew up. And it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people to grow up in Pittsburgh. What it meant to me is not what's relevant. What's relevant to this talk is what it means to have not grown up in Liverpool and not grown up in the West Coast, not grown up in Seattle. Because I've spent many years learning about the West Coast, Seattle, and things like the CIA and MI6, and the way that illusions and hallucinations are used to manipulate politics for families like Bush and the Morgans. And one of the things I've learned, and it's kept under strict confidence despite being quite open in some ways, is the way that the utopian consciousness of the 60s, what we associate with hair, translucent bands like Genesis, and misleading ideas like Uriah Heep's Return to Fantasy, and the shenanigans of Gail Raven that emerged from the Carousel Club in Dallas, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. Um, is, for one thing, it delves deeply into the consciousness of Kazetnik, a Holocaust survivor who took a lot of LSD in a Switzerland sanatorium. And gangs who discovered Hitler, like Walt Disney's gang, which, as you can see from Donald Duck, early dictator films, was sort of a fan of Adolf Hitler. And the way that the sound and stage of Prokofiev and Picasso back in the early days of the 20th century, 1910s, gave rise to a federal movement working with Spensky's fourth way ideas for the oligarchs who were passing money bags around and having controlled scenarios for war to make money, like they're doing in the Ukraine, which is a big, big money adventure, full of imagery of young death and the need that nobody can do anything about. What I've learned about it is that it's no accident that Robert Anton Wilson appears in the first issue of the Humanist magazine with someone named Otto Crash, or that my father's early 40s, 50s book about atomic energy was with someone named Israel Light. That was supposedly their names were Israel Light and Otto Crash. And Robert Anton Wilson appears. The first issue had Kennedy bisected on the cover. It came out in January 1964. And he mongered to his doomsday with anarchist harmonic licky chops war gamers from the fight clubs in UW Dialectical, who I traced COVID-19 to. So you see charming things like Tammy Simon, the Aquiline look-alike of Lennon, who had me in a Princeton Unitarian church as a lesbian for magical religion, metamorphosing to androgyny when Leslie Katz ended a long lesbian-like relationship with me. That's what I used to always say. It was a lesbian relationship. Then she totems with Robert Anton Wilson and Dalai Lama of Tibet. So it's the Mysterian voyage of the mythological subconsciousness that was plumbed by the Pepperland weirdos who went on real worlds and pinched it with Greg Carl the beneficium effluvium of psychedelic telepathy for the delusions of the diabolical weirdos that we need to get rid of because Jesse Jackson agrees with Greg Carl that Adolf Hitler is Casper the Friendly Jesus, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's sort of a hellish bent that came out of America's sort of mainstream view that Christianity was a union mandate. And then it got carried away with the colored pencils, you know. And here's what people think when the CIA was doing experiments to find out what people thought when they were under hypnography. And of course, what they thought was, you know, their personal encounter with abortion was going to lead to a nuclear bomb because everything is a projection of one's inner psyche. And so, you know, the Richard Starkeys took notes and called up the Jaime Carbonells and said, we can do this. We can show that these people were suicidal and make it a show and usher them as a benefit for their flying, go fly their kite into the beyond. And it was evidently inspired, the whole Imagine journey and stuff was inspired by the fiddlers who greeted the victims at the concentration camps and would play music for them. And Weisler called his ramp into the gas chambers the Himmelschwager, Road to Heaven. That's why Jennifer Rubin and Klaus Lanzmann giggled as they made COVIDs with Cohen. COVID videos, Pete, Spy Cam, you know, Licky Jobs, Pete. That King King's estate, where they planned the murder of Martin Luther King in Highland Park or Pittsburgh, was like King's heavenly estate, Himmelschlag, the road to heaven, right? And our fear of death has been um, crunched into a time frame of, you know, like when I went up to Maine around the area of homeless because Midori Goto was taunting me about Casper the Friendly Ghost and getting all Trump and McCartney were putting on theatrics. They had this lady with a gash thigh and stuff, you know, the blood of the lamb image, you know, because they were giving Midori Goto in return for a new Elizabeth Taylor dress to the mercenaries and so on to play havoc on the neuroplasm, you know, the ripper through the heart, you know, that they managed to rip the neuroplasm literally through my heart one night, you know. Colin Powell's espionage and gore, you know, when they hit me in the neck and you can see the hospital records. My eyes poured over, my eyes literally poured over onto my cheeks. Shady Side Hospital records. They traded it somehow with jobs. But anyway, and I was like out on the sidewalk, how will I live? How will I live? Because I was going into homelessness in places like Ohio. Well, they crunched it down for because the Croquet Reducer Corona was working with Todd Clark and Donald, the all, 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 we, all, all Donald, you know, with the Bronsteins and Burson's crowd, Donald, the maniacal pedophile who Carbonell helped so that Michael Reagan could get to his favorite scene some more. They've conjured a flame over Africa, right? The boiling the planet, the flame over Africa. And mansion cinema, man scene cinema, it says whoosh, and they boil the, you know, so, because there's not enough to go around, you know, and so they got to have parameters for the execution of innocent people. But you know, no one is innocent, says Adam Oz. Is that the Trumpy Tomb speechwriter who was schmoozing with Shulman when Penis Gabriel was liquor chopped porn and they were ripping off the museum and where one what it worth, and then they have this high-minded, Wispensky angel in the cloud coming down like Maxfield Parrish. We're going to teach peace. Give us some of that peace and nostrum and send them on their way. Send them on their way. Run along, fantasizers. And they use fantasy to invade Iraq. I mean, they're like, we're the good guys. Oh, weapons of mass destruction. Oh. You give us some child soldiers. If you're not a child soldier, you could have saved John Lennon. You better be a child soldier or you could have saved John Lennon. And they set up, Uvalde, go ahead, peep, peep, because they have this, gash in their intelligence that tells them that conscience is to withhold the sexual abstinence. It's the only way not to lead to a nuclear war. And this is their mystical bent. But what I'm saying is that it's taken a long time to learn the West Coast. The Sahara, for example, was part of the CIA's operation. It's now perfectly obvious. And there's things that they did to me. One of them was from Pittsburgh, leaving little imprecations like the suede purse that so resemble burgers, suede cutoffs, the fringe suede stuff. That they were planning the whole thing. The progression of the um, series of field trips that they took me on as a traumatized and frightened person, refusing to go along with them, doing my best to talk to the police and the principal of the school. The field trips that they took me on for, the the people in government working the whisper campaigns with Diego Gonzalez, the things that they were doing, you know, to set up the drama club of guerrilla theater, they called it. And for Hollywood, George Romero and Clint Eastwood and the other Kennedy killers who had written the script with Trumpy Tune. The things that they were doing, taking me on field trips, all show a procedural, topical idea that's very cunning and postdoctoral. And you're supposed to be a child soldier. You could have saved John Lennon. It's one of the thumpy drums that they use as a contrast. Wouldn't you rather be a child soldier than be like Jimmy Quee and your colored pencils, making butterflies to fly off into the beyond at Dachau, the new? And Obama was the Johnny Cochran for this stuff. He came thumping the table about Leslie Katz, who used to go out in the woods chanting, gonna rape, kill, pillage, and burn, gonna rape, kill, pillage, burn the babies. He was like, yeah, Leslie, go. That's Bernie Sanders, that's Matt Marcus, that's Howard Stern. Kill the Jimmy Queerbait, kill the Jimmy Queerbait. And Cyril Weck said, what you must keep thinking is that Jimmy Carrey's implant is Satan. That's the enemy within. And they all get all goo goo gaga while they sweep up the cash and stow it away in their black bags and go, mama, mama, Dawn, where the went, what it's worth. Dawn, where the went, what it's worth. So, the money bag oligarchs of the Wispensky circles, what's going on. And Oliver Stone goes off and licky chops with that putrid Putin dude from Russia. And they get mission to, he come and say, oh, NATO rigged this up. Of course NATO rigged it up. You got blood and blood, right? I am the walrus. Of course NATO rigged the whole thing up. But they did it with Putin. That's the obvious stuff. Casper, the friendly ghost, and Johnson said we want J. Edgar Hoover, who was helping Hitler to escape the Argentina, inside the tent pissing out. That's the sort of thing that Johnson would say. He was a buzzard from Stonewall, Texas. And so they were like, well, give the queers what they want. They want the queers want some said to put out some sniff for them and put some pepper virus in it, and then send them on their way and give us the send us on our way. So and the engine, but you whoa, 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 because there's going to be a landing of lunatics in spaceships of Weezo, starring Michael Glabnicki and Sherman Alexie, and guess who's going to play hoops with Lita Kim is Aaron Dixon. Yay! Hey, can you want to be a child soldier? You could save John Lennon. They all hit that jump, 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 jump. Peace now, Pete Shaw on the bongos. You want to be, you're going to be, you could save John Lennon. You want to be, no, you could save John Lennon. You want to be child soldier. Or you could save John Lennon. You want to be child soldier. Or you could save John Lennon. You want to be child soldier. Or you could save John Lennon. It's pure Pittsburgh. You want to know what I did learn in Pittsburgh? Is, what sort of knucklehead would come up with this monstrosity.